And welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today we're talking about self care and how self care requires cultivating the ability to say no to a lot of the musts and shoulds and from yourself and from others. But before we get started today, let's just take a minute or two to get settled in and present to ourselves and our bodies. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen just flooding your lungs and flowing into your bloodstream and nourishing all your cells and all your organs, bringing vital life energy. And as you exhale, exhale any negativity, any toxicity, any tension. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And this time, imagine bright, brilliant light, electrifying and illuminating every molecule and every electron, and just lighting you up from the inside out and connecting you with the world beyond. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining stress and tension and toxins and negativity. And now let's just gently press our palms together. Really softly rub your fingers gently against your palms. Feel how delicious it is to focus on that sensation and to experience it and to be present in your body right here, right now. Welcome, welcome. So, self care is something that so many of us deny ourselves, and I think um, we speak about this a lot, but we need to. Good morning, Irma. We're talking about self care. And by the way, I hope all of you had a lovely holiday and got to rest and rejuvenate. I don't know, sometimes holidays are busier than normal days, but in any case, um, I found this weekend that I just needed to stop and do literally nothing and to recharge myself. And my experience is that if when I reach those critical points where I just really need to take some time, welcome, conscious question. I'm glad you enjoyed the solstice. Um, that if I don't, then the consequences will be extreme. And so, this idea of self care, so many of us perceive it as being self indulgent or selfish or self centered. I think that there are good aspects to being self centered at times. You know, like if we have all these things to do in our lives, things that we're committed to, obligations and responsibilities, um, and we deny our own well being in the pursuit of those things, then ultimately we're the ones that end up paying the price. And if we have all these responsibilities to other people, then they pay the price too if we're no longer able to fulfill our commitments. So um, I think that the art of saying no is one that we can cultivate as we cultivate our sense of self-worth and self-acceptance, because we might be giving ourselves all kinds of negative messages like, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, I should feel this way, I should feel that way. And good morning, Tammy, welcome. What we want to be looking at, I think, is the cost of not having self-care. And one of the things we're talking about, cultivating the ability to say no. And I think that there are different ways to say no. There are ways to say no begrudgingly, like with anger, resentment, resistance, frustration. Those are ways that we can say no, versus saying a gentle no, like a gentle and clear, aligned no. It doesn't have to be a violent no. It doesn't have to be a pushback to say no. And I think that this is the case in so many areas of life, not just where we're cultivating a sense of self-care. To be able to say no without it having to be obstructive or resisting uh, comes from a place of alignment and feeling deserving, not like, what's the word? Um, well, deserving in a way of I deserve self-care. Um, and and it's an essential. When we recognize that it's essential, like nobody can deny you your breath, right? Or that it's not okay for anyone to deny you your breath. Um, and I think that these certain self-care routines and practices are essential and as essential as breath for us. So when you feel the need, when you feel the need to take a rest, even if it means saying, you know what, I just can't do that right now, or I'll take care of that later, whether it's to yourself or to somebody else. So, for instance, I always have lots of things on my plate if I choose to do them. And I imagine the same is true for you. But there are times when it's just more important. Good morning, Dido. Welcome. Is there times when it's just more important, higher priority to care for yourself before you get to a place of desperation? Because if you keep denying yourself the care that you need, your body or your circumstances or both are going to manifest in such a way that you get that break. And it'll often be to a much greater extreme than than you would like or than you would anticipate. So often, what I find is taking one day when I need it, whenever I need it, taking a day or taking a couple hours or whatever is saving me perhaps a week of illness or something worse. And it's interesting, I was just hearing the language as I'm speaking this to you about taking a day rather than giving myself a day. And there's a different aesthetic for giving and receiving, right? And good morning, Christina, and good morning, Tammy. Welcome, welcome. Great to have you guys here. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. We're talking about being able to give ourselves, rather than take the time, give ourselves the time to take care of ourselves, give ourselves what we need to nurture and nourish ourselves. And that this is a matter of necessity. It's not a it's not something that should be, or I don't like to use that word should, but I don't consider that self-care should be negotiable. It's a necessity. Now, certainly we could take it to extremes, but so Conscious Question says, giving to ungrateful entities makes me tired. I need better discernment. Breaks help. You made a great insight there, Conscious Questions. I think I need better discernment is actually what is important in our giving. So many healer people give and give and give to their detriment. And the thing is that that giving is often driven by a need for approval or love or acceptance or some kind of something in return. So we give because we think we should. We give because it makes us feel like a good person. But the thing is, we often then, because our giving is kind of motivated by a need for recognition, a need for appreciation, a need to feel like we're doing something important, because it's often driven by a need. What happens when people are ungrateful or don't have the appreciation for our giving that we are expecting or desiring, then that can become very deflating. And so what you're saying here is that you give to people who are ungrateful, and then then you get tired, and you do get to be more discerning. You don't have any obligation to give to anybody. Nobody has any obligation to give to anybody. And when we're giving, we can allow the giving to come from our hearts and from our choice to give without an expectation of receiving something back. So Conscious Question says, I sense a huge lack of gratitude in so many people, in so many humans. Well, sometimes sometimes we give when people don't want us to give. And that's where we get a huge lack of gratitude, right? Like we put ourselves out because we think we should. And then when we're not getting the acknowledgement we think we should get, then we get bent out of shape. So why are we doing the giving? Are we giving it purely because we choose to give? Or are we giving because we want the recognition and acknowledgement on the other side? And I think that is so common among healer people to be giving and giving and giving, and then feeling resentful that people aren't giving back in kind. And like I said, I think we get to look at what it takes to take care of ourselves. And if when we're going to be giving to someone, what's our motivation? You know, if our motivation is that it purely just gives me joy to give to this person, then I'm not going to get tired regardless of their response, right? If it just gives me joy. If I'm giving to receive, then that's a whole other story. And sometimes, and I've experienced this, where in a friendship, I have given and given and given. And then when I asked for something in return and it wasn't given, then I felt resentful. I felt like there was an uneven balance. And we often require some kind of give and take, and that's the way our relationships work. There needs to be some kind of give and take, some kind of reciprocity, unless you're consciously in a situation where you decide this is just one way and I'm fine with that. But the reciprocity can be something as simple as I'm giving to you and that makes me feel good. And that in and of itself could be enough. But there are often unbalanced relationships. And if that's the case, if you're getting to a place, or before you get to a place of feeling resentful, you get to moderate your behavior. And if it feels better not to give in that situation, then don't give in that situation, right? So, Sophia, welcome. Sophia says, I call it give and give, transfer and energy. I like that better than give and take. That's a really nice way to say it. And that brings us back full circle. Yeah, it is a transfer of energy, give and give. I'm going to adopt that, Sophia. It's beautiful. I think it comes back to the whole conversation about ourselves with taking the time versus giving ourselves the time, and to be able to generously give to ourselves rather than feel like we have to take to be able to nurture ourselves. So it's interesting how the subtleties of these kinds of conversations really go to the heart of the dynamic that underlies it, with this feeling like we get to take the time for ourselves. Who are we taking it from? You know, it's our time to give to ourselves and to others. And the experience, or the surrounding energy of giving, whether it be to ourselves or to others, is a much more open-hearted kind of experience than the experience of taking, whether for ourselves or from others, right? Because then there's this whole issue of deserving, and we can give to people without assessing whether they're deserving or not, right? Conscious question says, where are the least toxic places for sensitive, empathic people? Social media is toxic to me. Oh, that's a really good question. Well, I think for people who are empathic, and I'm one of them, one of the things that I find is I cultivate, I curate my friends pretty carefully, I think. You know, I curate my interactions so that the interactions that I have with people are nurturing interactions. And for the most part, where there are situations that are less that are that draw my energy, then I tend to stay away from that. I mean, I seek out things that support me, but beyond all of that, the biggest thing that people who are empathic can do is to strengthen your own energy field, in my opinion. And there are all kinds of techniques to do that, meditations and visualizations and healing sorts of modalities to support oneself. A visualization of sort of a torus of energy, you know, coming in through the head, going through all the chakras, coming back around and going back in as this torus or this donut sort of energy around you as you breathe that torus type energy. That also, and that's TORUS, not Taurus like the astrological sign. But that tends to strengthen the energy field and make us better able to interact with the energies around us without being kind of a magnet for all those energies. And Dido says, yes, we could see give and take as a zero-sum type of thinking. A win-win type of scenario could be, I give because I get to love doing it. Exactly. I give because I get to love doing it. So that is the reward. So when I give, not only do I give, but I give myself the pleasure of receiving the joy, having the joy of giving. So rather than give and take, I loved, let's see, who was it that said, Sophia said, give and give rather than give and take, which is beautiful. So it's a transfer of energy. I give because it gives me pleasure in doing so, without the expectation of something coming back from the other end. Um, so again, this is about giving ourselves the nourishing and nurturing that we need to, and it is a need before it gets to be an extreme an extreme situation, to give ourselves the care that we need, to give ourselves the rest that we need, to give ourselves the nourishment that we need, to give ourselves the 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 break, for instance. So Conscious Question says, social media is toxic. Well, then stay away from social media. What do you need to do with it, right? If it's toxic, we don't need to use it, right? Or you may find areas where it's not toxic and it's supportive. Maybe create groups of people to get together on Zoom. I have a couple groups that are kind of support slash mastermind slash friendship type groups where we meet once monthly or once a week, and we get to share and be with one another. And that has been a profound sense of support for me, to connect with people that are similarly minded in certain respects, and that are at least all open-hearted and connected with one another. So that's a way that we can nourish ourselves. Maybe taking walks is a way that you can nourish yourself. Being in nature, um, sleeping, meditating, singing, playing an instrument, doing artistic things, doing creative things. Um, Conscious Question says, "You are the kindest person I've spoken to on here in a while. I appreciate you." Well, thank you for that. That's very, very kind and sweet of you. I appreciate that. So, you know, the thing that we get to contend with self-care is guilt. And where does the guilt originate? The guilt originates from feeling somehow that we're not worthy of that self-care, which is kind of crazy talk, right? I mean, if we don't care for ourselves, how are we going to be able to do anything, or for ourselves, for others in the world? How are we going to be able to accomplish the things that we came here to bring into the world? Dido here says, so a torus is like a donut with a hole in it. There's something now called donut economics, which is about built-in sustainability. You don't want to fall out of that donut. So that could apply to our own individual. So could that apply to our own individual energy? Absolutely. It's exactly the same idea. So, you know, we have these energy centers, and sometimes they get out of balance, they get out of whack, they get smaller, they get bigger, theoretically, in terms of the amount of energy that they radiate or emanate. And by putting our attention on them and breathing into them, we can bring energy into our being, because we are in a field of unlimited energy. It's unbounded, and we can presence that in ourselves, in our body, in our energetic field. So when we imagine breathing in from the earth, from through our root chakra and our sacral chakra and our solar plexus and our heart and our third eye and our crown, and even above, when we imagine breathing in all that earth energy from the earth. And we can also imagine that as it comes out of our head, that we're also pulling down energy from the heavens and bringing that down, and imagining that coming around and going back up through. And as we run that energy through, it becomes this donut. And I love the association, Dido, with donut economics, that we have this donut of a field that we can operate in, with balance and strength. And it's the economics of our personal energy, and that's something that we want to keep in balance. So Sophia says, I have a support Zoom where I share awareness of holistic world and open conversation, and being part of EWN is a great support system. Exactly. So finding these support systems is a critical thing, particularly for those of us who are sensitive, because in isolation, I don't know, I happen to really need my time, just me time, without other communication with other humans. And that me time is revitalizing. And that said, I also do thrive on communication with others that I love and have an open-hearted relationship with, and where we're like-minded, where we can be generative together. And so giving myself the gift of those support systems and that nurturing, as well as the alone time and the time of separation and isolation from outside input, uh, all of that is part of my personal self-care formula. And I'm realizing how completely essential it is. And when we think about it, the key to this really is being able to listen in to yourself, listen in to the calling of your heart, which is a common theme throughout everything we talk about pretty much, is touching into your heart and what it's calling for you to do. And sometimes my heart is calling for me to just stay in bed, do nothing, whether it's just be in bed and read, be in bed and meditate, be in bed and think, be in bed and watch TV, be in bed and whatever it was. The common theme there for me sometimes is just stay in bed. And it's so interesting. This blows my mind, because what I was noticing is that I was feeling really stressed and really exhausted. And each day, I weigh myself every day, and each day I was gaining like a half a pound or a pound, like, because my body just will hold on to fluids like nobody's business. And so after the day of rest, I noticed that let's see, what's the difference? It was 5 pounds, 4.5, 5 pounds just disappeared for me. Now, I'm not saying that the best diet is to go and stay in bed. That's not what I'm saying. But what I realized is that the stress was making me hold this extra weight. And I really did feel weighed down. And when I just allowed myself to rest and to do nothing, it was like literally and figuratively that weight was lifted. And it's remarkable to me that rest can have such a powerful impact on physiology, not just for wakefulness, but in this case it was weight for me too. So Christina says, I gave myself some space by Christmas night. Although it was okay, it was emotional for me this year. And I was absolutely exhausted by 6:30 p.m. So I skipped a Zoom and went to sleep and was okay with it. You know what, Christina, you're not the only one that went to bed at 6:30. So I'm right there with you. In fact, I think it was right around 6:30. And I know that you've had a challenging year, and good for you to give yourself the sleep, the rest that you needed. We don't get to make ourselves wrong for taking the time and the space that we need for ourselves. And Ross, hi Ross, welcome. Great to have you here. Ross says, my rest looks like toes up on the recliner. Yeah. Well, rest is an art form because so many people just can't allow themselves to rest. And one of the things that I've noticed for me, and I'm hoping that, the past, I slept more than 12 hours last night. I woke up a couple times, but I really needed it. Plus, I relaxed all day. Plus, the night before, I had a more than 10 hours sleep. So I really, really needed it, obviously. And being okay with that, please, it's not like we need to make excuses. We get to listen to what the need is and to take care of ourselves. And Irma says, rest is an art form. Wow, mind blowing. I think it is. So, what I was going to say is that typically the way that my sleep pattern has been, and I think it's because I was so overtired, is that I would go to bed like 8 o'clock or 8:30 because I was getting up at like 4 or 5:30, and as soon as I laid down, I would start falling asleep, and then bam, I'm up, and for hours, and sometimes an entire night, I wouldn't be able to sleep, and so there I would find myself being awake and just saying, I can't lay here anymore. And so I think, well, I'll let you know if I remember to let you know whether this experiment works. But sleeping so much over the past few days hopefully has gotten me into a place where I can actually go to sleep at a reasonable hour and sleep. So that is part of this self-care regimen, is giving yourself the rest that you need. And the reason it's an art form these days is because we believe that the most important thing for us to do is keep doing. We all have so much to do. And we have this whole list of things we should do, or we must do, or we're obligated to do. And it goes on and on and on. And it ends up being something that impacts our emotional well-being. It impacts our physical resilience and well-being and our mental health. We get foggy when we're exhausted. We get foggy. We can't think straight. We can tend to make more mistakes and tend to get depressed from lack of good rest. And so what would happen if you guys made rest a conscious um, I at the same time that I want to recommend this, I have a little bit of a rebellion against, making it a to-do. But if you give yourself permission to give yourself rest as something that is integrated into your schedule, rest might be having a cup of tea and reading a book or the newspaper, if anybody still gets the newspaper, or, rest might be just sitting and daydreaming and looking out the window. But this is an essential, and this is something that is part of the paradigm shift that we get to make, that moves us away from being a doer, being a human doing, rather than being a human being. So wow, Tammy. Okay, so Tammy, you're kind of voicing a challenge that I've had too. Tammy's saying, it's so hard for me to sleep and rest. Last night I slept 1 hour and 45 minutes. So Tammy, I'm hoping that you give yourself nap time during the day, or some way to catch up on sleep. Sleep, if you guys take a look, if you do some of the research around sleep, sleep is so foundational to mental health, emotional health, physical health, and it's way more important than our culture gives it credit for. And uh, so one of my objectives is to get my sleep cycle working again. And I think a big part of it for me, Tammy, and it may be so for you as well, is that I was so overtired that I just couldn't sleep. You know how when they talk about babies and how they get really cranky because they're overtired and then they can't sleep. Well, I think that that's something that we get to see in ourselves as well. And our culture supports a lack of nurturance when it comes to rest and sleep. But there are all kinds of studies coming out that are really crazy about how critically important sleep is. So Irma says, Tammy, I'm learning to be more um, I think to sleep more, probably. And Conscious Question says, I feel better rested since I stopped using trazodone and other artificial sleep aids. Irma says, Tammy, I'm learning to be more intentional with my words. And when I use the word difficult there, so Tammy is saying it's so hard for me to sleep at night and rest. So one transformational word to use in the face of it being hard is I find sleeping challenging and resting, perhaps. But so Tammy says, I think that's me too, overtired. Exactly. And I know, like the um, inclination is to just keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. And that's what our culture tells us to do. And the thing is that there's a huge cost to that, a huge cost to that. If we have nothing left, if we're running on fumes, and I have felt for a long time like I was running on fumes, then how much do we have to be able to perform? What kind of toll is that taking on our body, on our mental state, on our emotional state, if we're not rested, right? So really, if you're having trouble resting, start looking into what's online about sleep and how to adjust your sleep schedule. I have a friend who takes an afternoon nap and has done so for years and years and years. And giving ourselves the opportunity to rest when we need rest, to sleep when we need sleep, that's such an important thing. And I really do believe that it's because I was so exhausted that I couldn't sleep. Um, because the pattern that I created for myself was keep going, keep going, keep going. So when I actually lay down to go to sleep, it's like, oh, I got to keep going. I trained myself into that. So now I get to train myself into allowing myself to relax and rest. And one of the things that I have found really helpful and that I did a lot of while I was spending my recess in bed was deep breathing, like deep, deep, deep into my gut, like breathing in and using your belly like a bellows. And then as your belly inflates, then allow yourself to inflate into your chest, and then to notice my muscles and the tension in my body and to relax that, and to do that over and over and over again. And it brought greater and greater relaxation to my body. Tammy says, and then I'm like, since I'm awake, I may as well do this or that. Exactly. Exactly. And so that's the challenge. What I did over the weekend was, rather than resorting to, when it was time for me to go to sleep, rather than resorting to my phone, which is something that I'd often do, or podcasts or something that I could listen to while I wasn't sleeping, I let myself just stay in the dark and keep my eyes closed and breathe and be in my body. And eventually I got bored enough with that I fell asleep, I think. And Conscious Question says, exercise is a huge help. The body needs movement, even chair yoga. That's a brilliant suggestion. So when the thing that I read about exercise and sleep is that you're best off to exercise earlier in the day so that your body can have a chance to wind down. And Tammy's, let me see. And Conscious Question said, like you said, controlled breathing, that can be done in bed. And Ross says, Dave Asprey's brand Bulletproof has many podcast interviews about sleep. I'm familiar with Dave Asprey. I have never, I didn't know about the podcast. Dave Asprey's a body hacker. So what that means is he's really looking for longevity and health type techniques and technologies to be able to support yourselves in better health. And, so I'm going to wrap up in a couple minutes, but we're talking about sleep and how important it is and challenges that we have for it. When I was a lot younger, I took a training that at that time was called the Silva Mind Control Method. And one of the things that they taught us was a technique to be able to get to sleep. And I'm reminding myself of it now because I haven't used it either, but it was really effective. So the technique is you imagine a blackboard, a chalkboard, and on the chalkboard, you write the number 100. And then you circle the number 100. And underneath the word 100, you write in script, in cursive, the word sleep. You write the word sleep or deeper. I remember deeper. But anyway, so you write the word deeper. And then you can go back and you can erase the circle that you put around the number. Or better yet, just erase the number within the circle, being careful not to erase the circle. Write the number 99, trace the circle, trace the word deeper, and then erase the number 99. Careful not to erase the circle, write 98, trace the circle, trace the word deeper. And I have never gotten lower than the 90s, I think, because my mind just said, I'm going to go to sleep. I can't do more of this. So maybe you want to try that and see if it works for you. And doing that along with the breath really can help. And what I notice if you're going to be focusing on breath is that as you breathe, you can allow yourself to sink more and more deeply into relaxation. And what that means is to be aware of the tension, particularly in your back and your shoulders and your neck. And as you become aware of that, to just allow yourself to let go more thoroughly as you're breathing more deeply. And every time you recognize that there's a place of tension, then you can just allow that to relax. And I've found that to be really powerful. So hopefully today gives you permission, if you didn't already grant yourself the permission, to give yourself the rest and relaxation and the self-care that you need. And before it gets to a point of desperation, like really to be ongoingly conscious and compassionate with yourself in gifting yourself the time, granting yourself the time and the energy that you probably so generously give to others. So give to yourself, take care of you, and it'll place you in a better position to be able to be the expression that you came here to be. So with that, I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for being here with me and for engaging in this conversation. And I just so appreciate all of you and the community that we're developing to create the lives that we most dearly dream of. So with that, I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live each weekday morning here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page at 9 a.m. Eastern. And until next time, take good care of you.